Welcome back to another explainer. Okay, today we're diving into a story that honestly, I think almost all of us are going to relate to. We're unpacking this fascinating, super grounded narrative about battling self doubt and finally escaping that dreaded comparison trap we all get stuck in. It's all about redefining what talent actually looks like, uncovering our hidden strengths, and really understanding the sheer power of shining in a totally different kind of light. Before we even jump into the story, I want you to stop and really think about something for a second. Have you ever felt like your absolute best just isn't good enough? Like, think about a time when you poured your absolute heart and soul into a project at work, or maybe a personal goal, only to look around the room and feel completely invisible compared to what everyone else is doing. Man, it is a heavy, frustrating feeling, right? Well, hold on to that thought because it sets the perfect stage for our story today about a high school student named Maya. So, Maya's story kicks off with a massive assignment in Mr. Harrison's class. It was called the Creative Solutions Project. Now, the prompt itself was pretty straightforward, but honestly, kind of intimidating. They had to identify a real problem in the school or community and present a totally unique solution to fix it. And while that sounds like a super fun opportunity to some people, for our protagonist, Maya, yeah, it triggered some intense Monday morning anxiety. As the class presentations kicked off, she was just sitting back there on the last row, knuckles completely white, nervously clutching her spiral notebook. Okay, let's dive into this because the classroom dynamics here are wild. First up, you've got Julian. He is standing up at the front, presenting this sleek, fully animated 3D model for a solar-powered cafeteria roof. I mean, the guy is giving off effortless CEO energy. Then you've got Chloe, right? She's pitching these common space redesigns with a vibrant, super polished portfolio that literally looks like it came from a professional artist. And then there's Maya. Her project? A simple stack of handwritten notes and some charts analyzing how the school's peer tutoring system was completely failing. Her presentation vibe? Just downright nervous and basic. The contrast here is staggering. You have the loud, incredibly flashy projects of Julian and Chloe on one hand, and Maya's super quiet, paper-based system on the other. As Maya looked down at her own handwritten notes, she just fell head first into the comparison trap. You can almost hear her internal monologue right here, capturing that awful, sinking feeling of inadequacy. Mine isn't flashy. I'm just not built to stand out. It is genuinely heartbreaking to hear, because Maya is making a classic mistake. She's incorrectly equating flashy with valuable. She's looking at Julian's incredible 3D model and Chloe's literal painted masterpiece and feeling like her quiet, meticulous observations just don't even come close to measuring up. To really understand Maya's internal state right now, we gotta talk about the comparison trap. When we evaluate ourselves, we so often hold up this totally distorted mirror. We end up comparing our own messy, behind-the-scenes, work-in-progress effort to someone else's totally polished highlight reel. And it perfectly illustrates the heavy, heavy toll that self-doubt takes on our minds when we just completely forget our own unique value. And in that exact moment of comparison, those toxic internal whispers can just completely take over. She's thinking things like, well, Julian built a 3D model, Chloe painted a masterpiece, and I just wrote a bunch of notes. When you speak to yourself like an enemy like that, you end up creating this shadowy, cold mental space where your actual true abilities, your quiet, highly practical strengths are just completely obscured by your own self-doubt. But let's pull back to the real-world classroom, because it is finally time for Maya to present. She walks up to the front, and her heart is just hammering against her ribs. She obviously doesn't have a flashy slideshow. Her voice is definitely shaking during those first few sentences. But then, something truly amazing happens. As she starts talking about this real freshman she interviewed, a kid failing algebra because he was way too intimidated to ask for help, her nervousness actually gives way to purpose. Her shaky voice steadies the exact moment she stops focusing on her own fears and starts focusing entirely on the struggling students who so desperately needed her help. So, the crucial point here is the brilliant, beautiful simplicity of the system she designed. Maya prioritized actual human connection over these grand, futuristic ideas. She built a highly practical, totally anonymous sign-up system that thoughtfully paired students based on their actual personalities and comfort levels. It was specifically engineered from the ground up to support quiet, anxious students. Maya literally used her quiet observation skills to address this massive, real-world need that everyone else had just walked right past. And this exact difference brilliantly illustrates why her idea was so incredibly powerful. Think about it. You have Julian's super sleek solar roof, which requires a budget of $20,000 that the school simply does not have. And then you have Maya's peer tutoring system, which costs $0, nothing. It is highly actionable, it's immediate, and it's practically free. It was a solution built entirely on empathy and smart organization, not some massive, impossible budget. So when she finally finishes presenting, the room is just totally quiet. Maya's stomach completely drops. She's standing there thinking, oh no, they absolutely hate it. But then Julian, the guy with the $20,000 3D model, actually raises his hand and says, honestly, that's brilliant. Maya's idea could actually start working tomorrow. And suddenly, the entire classroom just breaks into this genuine, massive applause. In that one single instant, Maya's deeply held assumption that her non-flashy project was worthless was completely shattered. After class wraps up, Mr. Harrison asks Maya to stay back for a second, and he gives her this incredibly powerful redefinition of what she had just accomplished. True creativity, he explained to her, isn't just about making art. It's not about who speaks the loudest or who makes the brightest, flashiest poster. Creativity is problem solving. It's empathy. It is the ability to see a quiet need that everyone else walked right past and actually taking the time to fix it. Which brings us to a really vital comparison. On one side of the spectrum, we have these flashy talents, right? The designers, the artists, the loud, charismatic speakers. But on the other side, we have practical strengths, the strategists, the deep listeners, the empathetic problem solvers. And here's the thing. The world desperately needs both. It is so deeply unfair to compare the behind-the-scenes effort of a practical thinker to the polished highlight reel of a flashy presenter. They operate totally differently, but it's those practical strengths that often make the most immediate, real-world impact. Mr. Harrison left Maya with this incredible piece of advice, and I really, really want you to let this sink in today. He said, don't dim your light just because it shines in a different color. I mean, wow. That realization is just everything. It's exactly what allowed Maya to finally walk out of that classroom, out into the crowded hallway with her head held high. She finally realized she didn't need to somehow magically transform into Julian or Chloe to be valuable. So Maya walks out of that classroom and into the crowded hallway, holding her head up for the literal first time all year. She finally stopped comparing her own behind-the-scenes effort to everyone else's highlight reels. By stepping back and actually recognizing her own unique superpowers, her quiet focus, her deep empathy, and her highly practical mind, she found genuine confidence. She finally accepted that her strengths weren't just okay, they were more than enough. Let's move to how we can actually apply Maya's realization to our own lives and see how this all builds together. It really comes down to 3 incredibly practical takeaways. First, redefine talent. You've got to recognize that being a great listener, being super organized, or just being the person who brings calm to chaos, those are massive strengths, even if they don't exactly win shiny trophies. Second, avoid the comparison trap. It is so deeply unfair to compare your messy, behind-the-scenes effort to someone else's polished final product. Just don't do it. And third, recognize actionable value. Always remember that those quiet, practical strengths are very often the ones making the biggest, most immediate impact in the real world. We've seen exactly how Maya discovered the immense, game-changing value in her own quiet, practical superpowers. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to challenge you directly with this one final provocative thought. What color is your light? Seriously, what is that hidden, practical superpower that you've been overlooking just because it isn't flashy or super loud? I really encourage you to go discover it, embrace it proudly, and most importantly, let it shine. Thanks so much for learning with me today on this explainer, and I absolutely can't wait to see you next time.